It wasn't a ghost that came to my door that Halloween. It was a boy wearing a paper mask, asking if I remembered him. The cops said he'd gone missing a year before that night. You don't have to believe me. Honestly, if I hadn't lived it, I wouldn't either. But I still see that mask every time I close my eyes, and I still hear the sound of that kid breathing through it. I live just outside Stillwater, Oklahoma, off Highway 51, a quiet stretch with long driveways and mailboxes half buried in weeds. You can smell dry leaves, diesel, and dust from the harvest trucks every October. Back in 2015, Halloween fell on a Saturday. My wife had taken our daughter to Tulsa for the weekend to visit her mom. I stayed behind to finish up paperwork for my HVAC business. It was cold enough that I had the fireplace going. I wasn't planning to hand out candy that year, so around 5, I taped a note to the front door. Sorry, out of candy. By 7:30, I'd half forgotten it. Then the doorbell rang. At first, I figured it was a package or a neighbor, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw a handful of kids in costume. Superheroes, princesses, one kid in a dinosaur hoodie. Their parents waited by the curb with flashlights. I sighed, took the note down, and grabbed a half-full bag of mini Snickers from the counter. "Trick or treat," they shouted when I opened the door. I smiled, passed out candy, and they ran off laughing. And then, as I was about to close the door, I noticed one more figure, standing alone near the end of the driveway. He was smaller than the others, maybe 8 or 9. He wore a faded blue jacket and jeans that were too short at the ankles. What caught my eye, though, was his mask. It wasn't plastic or rubber. It looked like it was made from a brown paper grocery bag, cut into a rough oval with 2 holes for eyes. The mouth was drawn in black marker, just a jagged smile, crooked and uneven. He didn't say anything. "Hey, you want some candy too?" I called. He nodded slowly and held out a pillowcase. His hands looked small and pale in the porch light. I dropped a few candies in. He whispered something I couldn't catch. "Sorry, what's that?" I asked. He said it again, a little louder this time. "Do you remember me?" It sent a shiver down my back. I blinked, ready to ask what he meant, but he'd already turned and walked down the driveway into the dark. I tried to shake it off. Probably a prank, maybe a friend's kid I didn't recognize. Still, something about that voice stuck in my head. Too calm, too flat. About an hour later, the doorbell rang again. I grabbed the bowl, expecting more kids, but when I opened the door, nobody. Just the sound of leaves scraping across the porch. Then I noticed a piece of torn paper lying by my feet, a scrap of grocery bag folded once with a black marker smile drawn across it. Same as the mask. I stepped out onto the porch, scanned the road. Nothing. Just a few porch lights down the lane and the sound of wind through the trees. I went back inside, locked the door, and told myself not to be stupid. At about 10:15, the knocking started. Not the bell this time, knocking. Slow, steady. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. I froze. When I finally worked up the nerve to peek out the side window, I saw him again. The boy in the paper mask, standing on the first step. The porch light hit just enough to show the bag had gone soft,
wet around the mouth hole, like he'd been breathing through it for hours. "Hey!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Get off my porch!" He didn't move. I opened the door a few inches, chain still on, and shouted again. "You hear me, kid? I'm calling the cops." He tilted his head like he was listening. Then, in that same flat voice, "Do you remember me?" I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, locked every bolt, killed the lights, sat there in the dark listening to my heart hammer. The knocking stopped. At about midnight, headlights swept across my window. A county cruiser. Apparently a neighbor had called in, said they heard shouting. The deputy was young, maybe 25. He listened, shined his flashlight around the yard, checked the trees. Nothing. "You sure it wasn't just a kid goofing off?" he asked. "Not like that," I told him. He gave me a tight smile. "Well, lock up, try to get some sleep." He left, and the night went dead silent again. I must have dozed off on the couch because at 2:47 a.m. the motion alarm went off. I had one of those driveway sensors that chime when someone walks near the garage. I opened the camera app on my phone. The feed glitched, static, a flicker, then came back. There he was, standing right in front of the door, staring into the camera. The paper mask had torn down one side, showing a bit of skin, pale like dough. His breathing came through the mic, slow and wet. In his hand, he held a small orange pumpkin bucket. He tilted it toward the lens. Inside were candy wrappers, empty, torn open. Then the feed froze and went black. I sat awake until dawn with a baseball bat across my knees. When the sun came up, I went outside. There were small footprints on the porch, sneakers, size maybe 4 or 5. They led down the steps toward the road and disappeared in the gravel. On the top step lay another piece of paper bag, folded neat. On it, in that same marker, "Tricked you." A week later, a deputy stopped by again. He said a family 2 streets over had reported their 9-year-old missing on Halloween. They showed me a picture. Blue jacket, faded jeans, same kid. But then the deputy frowned. "The thing is," he said, "that boy went missing back in 2014. His folks moved away last year. Guess they're still hoping." I haven't opened my door on Halloween since. I leave a bowl outside with a note that says, "Take one." Last year, out of habit, I checked the porch camera around midnight. There he was again, standing perfectly still under the porch light. That same small shape, that same mask, though now it looked more wrinkled, like it had been rained on 100 times. He held out the bucket, waited, and then, just as the feed glitched, lifted something out and set it on the step. The next morning, there was a single Snickers bar by the door. Next to it, a folded piece of paper bag with that same crooked smile. This time, the words underneath said, "Do you remember me now?" I still live in that house. I replaced the cameras. I tell myself it's just a story, something my brain twisted after one long, lonely night. But last week, 2 weeks before Halloween, I took the trash out after dark. Sitting on top of the garbage can was a small paper mask, damp, torn, same black smile, and written across the bottom, faint but clear, "See you soon."
You'll never believe me when I say this, but I swear to God, the smell of diesel fuel still makes me sick. Not because I worked at the truck stop for 12 years, or because my old Chevy ran on fumes half its life. No, it's because of what happened that Halloween night back in 2013, out near the old Highway 81, north of Enid. I saw something that wasn't supernatural. No ghosts, no demons, just people. And that's what makes it worse. I was 31 then, divorced, drinking too much, working night shifts at the Love's gas station outside town. My Halloween plans were a 6-pack of Coors and some leftover chili in a plastic tub. But around 7 that evening, a guy named Travis came in, a regular, trucker, big belly, thick mustache, the type who calls everyone brother. He told me there'd been an accident a few miles north, near an abandoned farmhouse. Bunch of kids went out there for Halloween, he said, but the cops are blocking the road. I asked him what happened. He said, "Something bad, real bad. They ain't letting nobody close." The farmhouse he was talking about, everyone knew it. Old Miller place. White paint peeled off decades ago, windows broken, porch sagging like a broken jaw. Locals said a farmer hanged himself in the barn back in the 70s. I never cared much for ghost stories, but that house had a way of getting under your skin when you drove past at night. I clocked out early. Call it curiosity, call it boredom, but I drove out there, an hour before midnight. The road slick with cold drizzle. There were no police cars, no flashing lights, no sign of any accident. Just fog, and the faint orange flicker of jack-o'-lanterns lined up along the gravel road. At first I thought some kids had done it for a prank. 20, maybe 30 carved pumpkins, each one glowing dimly with candlelight, placed every 10 feet. The closer I got, the more I noticed they weren't store-bought pumpkins. They were old, soft, rotten, the kind that smell like vinegar and death. My headlights caught a figure standing near the fence. I slowed down. It was a man in coveralls, holding a lantern. He didn't move when I stopped. "Hey!" I called out through the open window. He turned his head slowly like it hurt to do it. His face was shadowed, but I could make out something wet glistening on his cheek. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice rough and quiet. "They're still looking." "Who?" I asked. He just walked into the fog and was gone. I parked by the ditch and got out. The air smelled of wet hay, diesel, and that sour pumpkin rot. The farmhouse loomed ahead, dark and silent, except for the squeak of the windmill turning. And then I saw the truck. It was an old Ford F-250, mud-caked, one door open, engine still ticking. There were candy wrappers scattered on the ground and a half-empty bottle of Fireball whiskey on the seat. No people. Just that sense, the one your gut gives you, that something had gone terribly wrong. I should have turned back. God, I wish I had. But I walked toward the barn. The door hung crooked, banging softly in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of gasoline. Not gas, diesel. I knew the difference. There were wet footprints on the concrete floor leading toward the back, and in the corner, under a broken loft, lay 3 pumpkin heads, each one carved with the same face, uneven triangle eyes, jagged mouth. They weren't sitting on the ground. They were mounted on fence posts, with something dark running down the wood. I don't know why, but I called out, "Hello?" And I heard something move upstairs. I climbed the ladder, careful not to make a sound. The boards creaked. There was a light, a flashlight, flickering weakly near a pile of blankets, and under those blankets, a shape. When I pulled the blanket back, I saw a young guy, maybe 19, maybe 20. His throat was cut, but not deep. He'd bled out slowly. His eyes were open. There was writing on his shirt in black marker, "Tricked you." I stumbled back, almost fell through the hole in the floor. My stomach lurched. The flashlight died right then, like it ran out of courage. Below me, I heard boots scraping concrete. Someone was walking inside the barn. I crouched near the rafters, holding my breath. A man came in, not the same one I'd seen on the road. This one was bigger, maybe 50, in a denim jacket. He had a jerry can in one hand and a cigarette in the other. He walked to the fence posts, looked at the pumpkins, and said softly, almost like he was praying, "3 done, 2 more to go." I didn't breathe. I didn't move. He poured diesel across the floor, muttering to himself something about cleansing. Then he lit the match. The flame caught slow but steady, crawling along the wet floor like a living thing. I jumped from the loft, hit the dirt hard, rolled under the wall crack, and ran like hell. The fire spread fast, too fast, thick black smoke rising behind me. I reached my truck and looked back. The whole barn was burning, pumpkins melting into black puddles. I saw the man step out, his clothes on fire, but he didn't scream. He just stood there, arms out, as if offering himself to it. And he fell. I drove to the sheriff's office in Enid, shaking so bad I could barely turn the key. They found 2 more bodies in the ashes the next morning. The boy I saw and another kid, maybe a girl. The third was burned beyond recognition. They never found the man I saw at the fence. The sheriff told me later the farmhouse had been occupied back in the 90s by a guy named Lyle Bowman, a farmhand fired from the grain elevator for stealing fuel. His son died in a tractor accident one Halloween. Lyle disappeared a week later. Some said he went crazy. Others said he moved to Kansas. But the property stayed empty until that night. For weeks I couldn't sleep. I kept smelling that diesel, even when there was none. Once I woke up and found a pumpkin on my porch, not carved, just sitting there. Wet mud clung to its bottom, like it had been taken from the field. No one admitted leaving it. A year later, I drove past the old place again. It was gone, burned to the foundation. The county cleared the land, nothing left but scorched earth and weeds. And yet every Halloween since, someone lines that stretch of road with jack-o'-lanterns, not new ones, old, rotten, like before. Nobody ever admits doing it. I don't tell this story much anymore. Folks either laugh or call it small-town gossip. But when the nights get cold and I smell diesel on the air, I remember the sound of that man's boots on the barn floor. And I remember what he said. 3 done, 2 more to go. I don't know if he meant the kids or if he meant something else.
I haven't slept in 3 weeks, and I think something else is awake. I don't expect anyone to believe this, and honestly, I don't blame you. If I were on the other side of the screen, I'd scroll past it too. Just another sleepless person losing their grip, right? That's what I thought at first. That what was happening was just exhaustion, hallucination, stress, the usual. But after 3 weeks without real sleep, I've started to realize something else might be awake, and it isn't me. It started small, little things you can excuse. You know how it is. You stay up late a few nights and your thoughts start looping like a broken record. I'd been working extra shifts at the hospital, helping cover nights. The hours bled into each other until I couldn't tell whether it was Wednesday or Saturday. I'd come home and collapse on the couch, staring at the ceiling fan spin. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see flashes. Not dreams, not memories, just faces. Blurred, almost like photographs burned at the edges. Every time I tried to focus, they'd vanish. At first, I laughed it off. Classic insomnia, your brain throwing static. Then, I noticed something strange. When I blinked too long, it felt like time skipped. Like I'd been gone for a second too long. The clock would jump. I'd catch my reflection in the TV screen, and for a split second, it wouldn't be in sync with me. It would lag, like a bad video feed. I told myself I was imagining it. That's what you do when you're tired. You rationalize. By the end of week 1, I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. Every time I started drifting off, I'd jolt awake, heart racing, convinced someone had whispered my name. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't even a voice I recognized. Just the idea of a voice, like my mind was testing if I'd answer. I started leaving lights on. The TV running low, white noise humming in the background. My apartment began to smell like old coffee and panic. Then came the mirror. I'd stopped turning on the bathroom light at night because it felt too bright, too harsh. But one night, I went in, flicked it on out of habit, and for just a moment, my reflection didn't follow. It blinked a second too late. Just a fraction, but enough for me to see it. Enough to know something was wrong. After that, I couldn't stop checking. Every time I passed a reflective surface, a window, a darkened TV, I'd glance just to see if it would happen again. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But once I saw it smile when I didn't, I covered every mirror in the apartment. Week 2. I called in sick, said I had the flu. I told myself I'd rest, finally crash, sleep 12 hours and reset everything. But the second I lay down, I felt like someone else was in the room. Not in a ghost story way, more like when you're on a call and you realize there's another person on the line. That quiet pressure of being heard. I'd feel my heartbeat in my ears, my chest tightening, breath catching, like I was falling but hadn't moved an inch. I'd open my eyes, and the room would look different. Not wrong, just shifted, like I was looking at a copy that wasn't quite right. Once, I woke up standing in the hallway, no memory of getting out of bed. My hands were shaking, my fingernails digging little crescents into my palms. I'd been gripping something, but there was nothing there. I started writing notes to myself, sticky notes on the fridge. You are awake. Don't trust the mirror. Keep the lights on. By the end of week 2, I stopped using the word awake at all. It didn't feel like I was. It felt like I was borrowing consciousness from something else, something watching through me. My phone started recording by itself at night. I'd wake up and find short clips saved to my gallery. Always black screen, muffled breathing, a low whisper under the noise. I played one once. It said my name. Over and over, like someone practicing the pronunciation. I deleted it, but the next night, there were more. I tried calling friends, but every conversation ended the same way. They'd say I sounded different, that there was an echo, like two voices overlapping for a second before syncing again. One friend asked if I was using a voice filter. That was the first time I realized maybe I wasn't the only one hearing it. Week 3. My apartment feels smaller now. I keep the blinds closed because I swear I've seen someone outside, but when I check, there's never anyone there. I unplugged my TV, my computer, even covered the microwave clock, anything that could reflect. The problem is, I can still feel it when I close my eyes. That pressure, that presence. I can almost see it now, the shape of me, but taller, straighter, like my posture if I weren't so tired. It moves the way I do, but smoother, more confident. Sometimes when I speak, I hear my words echo, just slightly out of sync, like there's a delay. And sometimes when I stop talking, the echo keeps going. Last night, I recorded myself again, one last time. I had to know if I was imagining it. I set the phone on my desk, turned off the light, lay down, and waited. Hours passed. I don't remember falling asleep. When I woke, the phone was on the floor. The recording was still running. 8 hours, all static, except near the end. There's movement, like someone walking. Then, my voice. Only it isn't me. It sounds stronger, steadier. It says, "He's finally resting." Then silence. I check the video feed. The camera shows me lying in bed, motionless. Then something stands up. My shape, my size, wearing my clothes. It looks down at the camera, reaches out, and shuts it off. I don't remember doing that. And yet, here I am, awake, writing this, breathing, typing each word carefully so I don't forget the order of them. But sometimes when I pause, I can swear the typing continues for a second after I stop. Maybe it's habit. Maybe it's something else. Maybe, after 3 weeks without sleep, something else decided it was tired of waiting. If that's true, if something else really did wake up, then I hope it's finally getting the rest I couldn't. Because I think it's still here, and I think I'm the one who's dreaming now.
Highway patrol breaks a man in different ways. 12 years on the job, and I thought I'd seen it all. Wrecked bodies twisted in steel, drunks who laughed with blood on their lips, the pop and crack of gunfire on lonely roads. Fear becomes routine. Horror turns into paperwork. At least, that's what I believed. Until last month. Until that one shift that made me doubt not only myself, but the world I thought I understood. The night was clean, almost too clean. A dry Wednesday fading into Thursday, the sky wide and black, stars sharp enough to cut. My patrol started at 10. By 1:30, I was driving the same stretch of I-70 I could have traced in my sleep. A flat vein of asphalt between two towns most maps forget, flanked by dead farmland and barns that looked like broken teeth. That's when I saw it. A Chevy Impala, old and tired, parked on the shoulder. No lights, no hazards, just sitting there like a question mark. I stopped, switched on the blues, and walked up. The driver's door hung open, key in the ignition. A woman's purse slummed on the passenger seat next to a half-empty bottle of water. The kind of scene that screams, "I'll be right back." Only the engine was still warm. Whoever had left it hadn't been gone long. I called for a tow, figuring I'd at least make it official. Then I saw something. A figure. Out in the corn, 100 yards from the road, just standing there. "Police!" I shouted. "You all right?" No answer. I clicked on my flashlight and stepped into the field. The stalks whispered around me, dry and restless. That's when I realized the silhouette was wrong. Too tall, too thin, the legs stretched a little too far, the head bent at an angle no human neck should tolerate. And then it turned. Its eyes caught my beam, not reflecting, but glowing, as if the light came from inside. I froze. My hands slid to my holster. "Stay where you are," I barked, though my voice broke on the edges. The figure stepped closer. Corn hissed louder, and then it was gone. Not vanished behind stalks, not ducked out of sight, just gone. I backed away fast, every nerve on fire. Then the footsteps started, heavy, deliberate, closing in behind me. I whipped around, nothing. Just the beam of my flashlight trembling over corn that swayed as if someone had just moved through it. I ran. Back to the cruiser, slammed the door, locked it. The radio exploded with static, a crackle, a moan, then a voice. A low, dragging voice that said my name. The real name. The one only my family uses. I killed the radio. Sat in the dark. Tried not to breathe. When the tow truck finally arrived, the Impala was gone. No skid marks, no footprints, no trace it had ever been there. I wrote it up as a routine disappearance. Easier that way. Safer. But when I got home, my wife frowned at my boots. "Why are they covered in corn husks? Were you walking out in a field all night?" I told her no. I told her I'd barely stepped off the road. But she showed me her phone. That morning, she'd gotten a call. The number said private, but in the call log, the name that appeared was mine. I want to bury this as just another weird night. God knows I've buried worse. But the truth keeps gnawing at me. People vanish along that stretch of highway. Always the same place, always the same silence. I don't know what I saw. A man? A trick of the dark? Something wearing a human shape like a costume? What I do know is this. Every time I drive past cornfields now, every time I hear that dry, rattling whisper, I feel it watching, and my blood turns to ice.
12 years in uniform, and I thought I'd built up a kind of armor. Domestic disputes, bar fights, overdoses in back alleys. Nothing surprises you after a while. You write the reports, file the paperwork, and move on. But that night on Old Briar Road, something broke through the armor. It was just after midnight when dispatch came through. Unit 14, check out a disturbance, abandoned property, corner of Briar and 7th. Caller reports screaming. I knew the place. Everyone in town did. The house had been empty for years, paint peeling, roof sagging, windows like blank eyes staring out at nothing. Kids dared each other to break in on Halloween, but for the most part it sat untouched, like even the teenagers knew better. I pulled up, killed the engine, and sat for a moment. The neighborhood was dead silent. No dogs barking, no traffic, just the ticking of my cruiser's engine as it cooled. The house loomed in the dark, 2 stories, porch sagging like a broken jaw. One upstairs window glowed faintly, even though there hadn't been power run to the place in decades. I radioed in. "Dispatch, Unit 14, show me on scene." "Copy 14, backup en route, ETA 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I unholstered my light and stepped out. Gravel crunched under my boots, each step too loud. The air smelled damp, like mildew and rust. The front door wasn't locked. It swung open with a groan, revealing a narrow hallway. My light cut across wallpaper curling like dead skin, dust motes floating in the beam. "Police," I called. "If anyone's in here, announce yourself." Nothing. Just the drip of water somewhere deep inside. I moved slowly, checking corners, every nerve wound tight. Then came the first sound. Footsteps. Upstairs. The staircase complained with every step, wood soft and swollen under my weight. Halfway up, I stopped. A whisper. Not words, just a dry, rasping hiss, like breath dragged across broken glass. I gripped my sidearm tighter, heart hammering. "Police! Come out where I can see you!" Silence. Then another sound. The creak of a door slowly opening somewhere down the hall. I reached the landing. 5 doors, all closed, shadows thick around their frames. My light caught old family photos still hanging crooked on the wall, faces blurred, eyes scratched out. The whisper came again, this time closer. I pushed open the first door with my boot, empty. Just a rotten mattress, stuffing spilling out. The second room was worse. Walls covered in what looked like child's drawings, scrawled in something dark. Stick figures with wide, empty circles for heads. All of them standing around a house that looked exactly like this one. I felt sweat slide down my neck. My radio hissed with static. Then a voice came through, low, distorted, not dispatch. "Officer," my blood froze. "We've been waiting." I yanked the radio from my belt. "Dispatch, Unit 14, are you reading this?" Only static. Then the upstairs light, the one I'd seen from the road, flickered and buzzed. It was coming from the last room on the left. The door was already open a crack. My light barely touched the inside. I pushed it wider. The room was empty, except for a single wooden chair. On it sat a tape recorder, ancient, its reels spinning. I stepped closer. My boots sunk into something soft. When I looked down, my stomach turned. Old clothes, dozens of them, laid out neatly on the floor. Men's shirts, women's dresses, small shoes, all mildewed, stiff with age. The tape clicked, and a voice came through. My own voice. "Stay where you are," it barked, the same words I'd shouted minutes earlier. The hair on my arms lifted. From the corner of the room, something shifted. A figure
peeled itself out of the shadows, too tall, joints bending the wrong way, head lolling like it was loose on its neck. It stepped forward, bare feet whispering on the floorboards. Its face was pale, stretched thin, eyes nothing but holes. And when it opened its mouth, my own voice came out. "Run!" I didn't think. I fired once, twice, the shots deafening in the small room. But when the light cleared, the figure was gone. The chair was empty. The tape recorder still spun, playing nothing but static now. I bolted, down the hall, down the stairs, out into the night air. I didn't stop until I was back in the cruiser with the doors locked, gas pedal shaking under my boot. Backup arrived 5 minutes later. They swept the house. No tape recorder, no clothes, no sign anyone had ever been there. I filed the report as unfounded disturbance. Easier that way. But I can't shake it. Every night since, when I close my eyes, I hear my own voice whispering back to me, "Run." And sometimes, when I'm alone in the patrol car, driving the back roads, my radio crackles with static, followed by my name, spoken in my own voice.